This. Go away.
All
right. I think we are live. Let me know if you can hear my fan, because I can hear my fan. Good afternoon, everyone out there. Welcome back to the Minimum Viable Person show, joined by myself and my colleague, friend, longtime buddy, Thomas Edwards. We try to do this show every other Wednesday, and there isn't really that solid of a reason that we exist other than to provide the proverbial pillow for one or all of us to scream into. So feel free to scream away. Thomas, why don't you kick us off?
I wish I had things to scream about. Maybe a couple days ago I would have, but today things are good, man. Today things are good. Feeling pretty good. Just spent a lot of the day so far with my daughter, and it's always nice. Like, honestly, I'll say this: like, during this period of time where you can look outside in the world and it's filled with messages of fear and hate and scarcity, and these are things that, like, oftentimes the media wants you to see and feel and experience. It's really nice when you are able to find those experiences, outlets, whatever you want to call it, tools. In my case, in my daughter, that grounds me into like the gratitude of what I presently have and how good it makes me feel, despite what's happening outside of my world and my control. And I know for a lot of people, they may not be able to see that right now. They may not be aware that they have that right now. Perhaps maybe those who are struggling out there actually don't have those things, So it's moments like this morning where I get to spend time with her and just enjoy being with her that makes how good it makes me feel. Everything else that's going on out there a little less quiet. A little more quiet, I mean.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like the opposite.
Yeah. What are you experiencing?
I understand, like, the broader notion of sort of just gratitude for the fundamental thing about being grateful that we have our children, we have our family, we have our health for the time being. But I've been having the opposite feeling. Like, I see my son and I think how much we fucked up the world. I think about how fucked up the place we live, and I think like how bad, and I wonder and fear how limited his future, like what his options are, like in this world, right? Like, yeah. I don't know, like, yeah. I mean, I'm very happy. Much the same way I think you're happy, I'm happy. And it is a source of like a little bit of like light, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
In me for sure. But most of the time I'm like, we gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I mean, of course those things can for sure come to mind, especially like if you're deep in it and you're just seeing it, like, yeah, like your first inclination is to like GTFO, right? Yeah. And like, and the other side of it for me is like, I can't really control any of that, and like, I don't know. And to your point, like, I don't know what my future, or not my future. I don't know what Ellie's future is going to look like, right? Yeah. Like, what kind of experiences that she'll get to have, And I also can't control that either, right? And so what I do know and what I do have is like wisdom that I can impart upon her to get her to have her as prepared as possible for what may or may not come, right? I also have this platform, right? I also have this platform to be able to share messages that I hope, since we started this over a year ago, that, we can really provide a place where people can express and think and contemplate and also like feel some sense of spaciousness and peace and hope. You know, maybe even a distraction, you know,
Yeah.
once every other week for those who might be really deep in it and are having a hard time, you know. So that's what I really mean is like, you know, I do like I do think about those things, and at the same time, like the more I think about those things, then the less I'm putting energy towards the things that like actually I can have a significant influence on, you know. So, but I hear you, and I hear you 100% because
I hear you. Look, I hear you too.
yeah, right. Because I know that side of me too. That side of me too is very loud, and I have to.
I'm in one of those. I guess I'm in one of those down weeks. You know, like where the glass is just half empty. You know,
Yeah.
I don't. You know, my wife has the opposite reaction.
Mm-hmm.
She is like gung ho, fucking. I'm gonna pamphlet the place. You know, like she's out there recruiting people and getting people to vote. There's like been somebody by the house every day, like sitting on the porch, like learning how to text and do stuff. She's amazing. You know, like
Yeah.
And you know, this started before the Supreme Court thing, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I started writing like a haiku actually, like called Red Sun, and it was all about like when the skies were changing color. You know, the thing that gets me is just how freaking disappointed I am in people. Like I just cannot. That's what it's not the politics. It's like the underlying shittiness of people that like actually really makes me sad. You know, like
yeah. You know, a friend of mine sent me a video. It was an amazing video of someone rapping and basically just educating, like, you know, the idea of like we elect a president that becomes this, as we've talked about, right, the figurehead, the face of our nation, and when we're not in terms of how it's been presented to us, we see that person, that president, currently he, as it has been in all of the presidential history so far, he has been the person that we see responsible for all the things that happen in our country. And for those who are not aware, right, or those who don't know, like that's not true, right? He signs off on stuff, but he's not it's not a totalitarian type structure, right? When we look down, and it's interesting because I think about my 6th grade civics class and how I did not really pay attention in that class, but I did remember some things, you know, and in terms of like the different levels of branch, right? Or it's the executive, judicial, legislative, and, you know, our influence and our ability to vote. When we talk about get out and vote, it's not just for the president, because the reality is the president's just one person of hundreds of people who are,
totally.
you know, in position to make.
You are pointing out to me, but even in the voting, like I feel like so cheated and wronged by so many things, right? Like I mean, fuck the way they cheat, gerrymander, they're suing to prevent people from voting. Like all the things they do, like, you know, like we got to put like a headwind on whatever poll you see. You got to subtract like 3 to 5% for all the bullshit they're going to pull. You know, there's just fundamentally no fairness, right? That's what gets me, right? Is that, and more importantly than fairness, like, you know, like I don't think the universe is supposed to balance itself out or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right? But I mean, it's like, the cravenness of people like who want power, right? Like I am amazed that people do not recognize or that anyone would warm to that kind of cravenness, right? It's fundamentally saddening, right? Like,
yeah. And to your point, like I love that you use the term craven, you know, because it is true, right? It's greed and gluttony, you know, and this is, for anyone who is here, you know, most people I assume are here are, you know, entrepreneurs or self-starters. This applies to us as well.
yeah.
When we seek entrepreneurship, it goes not just we may have a mission that goes beyond us, but let us not forget that this has so much to do with us as entrepreneurs, right? Like when we start a business or a mission, like our desire to carry that out and its success is based on how much influence and power we're able to create to make that reality. And with that power, as it increases, there's always this possibility that it could become corrupted based on how firm our intention is to seeing that mission through. And if that mission is seen through, making sure that like your head is aware, your mind and your soul is aware of like the next intention. So it doesn't just become this like lost piece. And part of this is also me expressing myself of what happened with me and Wingman, right? With Wingman, I was able to see it through. And when I didn't see anything on the other side and didn't have an intention of what to do next, it kind of sat there, the influence and the acclaim and the notoriety and all the great things that happened and the popularity that I created, it started to corrode and rot because it didn't have an intention to put, it didn't have it when I think about it, the energy of it, I didn't have it directed towards something. And so it ended up being something that I became dependent on in order for me to survive. And it didn't work. You know, it didn't work for me until the point where I had to walk away from it and start something fresh because it just wasn't in alignment with who I am today. Now, that for me was an experience that I had. I started Wingman in 2009. I retired in last year, right? So 2019. So that's 10 years. Now take this and now apply it to politicians who have been in office for 50 years.
Yeah.
60 years, 70 years, right? Like, there's no way in hell that they're not going to do anything possible within the confines, inside and outside of the law, that's going to allow them to, that they're going to do in order for them to maintain that level of power that they've been able to build, coerce, and usurp over those many decades. And so we have to really think of it, and I really appreciate you saying that, is we think of it from a human level, right? What is going on with the those particular humans that are getting to the point where like it's beyond, you know, caring for really others, you know, their, you know, humanity, yeah. Right? And it's more about themselves, you know, and it's like when you see that, that's what you need to extract out of that system. It's not everyone, right? But you can see who those people are, and then you can start to extract them from that system, you know, and that's the part that's disappointing. Is like, they find ways in order to like keep that, but I also can't blame them because they've been in that position for 50 years. That is now who they are. That may not have been who they were going into it, but that is who they are now. And that is disappointing.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's just very hard. But, you know, my Maria shared this post, and it was like one of those random ones, you know, like, and you read it and you're like, oh, man, this is so true, right? Like, basically, it was like a post that was basically like someone's explaining like what like people don't get about Trump supporters, and basically it boiled down to like the whole theory of their thing is just like fuck the libs, right? Like that's just it. Like there's nothing else to it. Like like that's the whole thing, right? Like, and so like you know, like you see things, right? Like things just piss me off, right? Like evangelicals, I don't have any problem with religion. I don't have any problem with you being of faith. I have a problem with you being a hypocritical, cynical asshole, though, right? Like when it comes to it, right? Like, and when people call you on it, you have no answer for it, right? Like I have problems with those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
yeah.
So many things. Like last night, you know, this moron was giving another one of his talks. He's talking about a reporter getting shot in the leg with a rubber bullet, and his audience is laughing, right? Like, what has happened, right? Like, where 40% of our country who supports this moron, right, like, finds that funny, right? Like seriously, that's like it's mind-boggling, right?
It's concerning for sure. You know, I mean, but here's the thing, right? Like, when you are in the position where you get to judge and categorize, like there's loyalty and power and coercion and influence in that too, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is something that has existed since the beginning of time, right? Like,
But you know what happened with the government, or in particular, right?
Yeah.
Two things. One, the founders were amazing, but they weren't perfect. They had a lot of stupid bullshit in there to begin with, right? So don't ever come at me like with this is what they meant, because they meant a lot of stupid things also, right? So like you wouldn't have amendments if they were perfect, right?
Yeah.
But more importantly, right, is that back then they at least could kind of count on people like correcting themselves. Like, and it feels like we're circling the drain right now to like where that doesn't seem feasible anymore. And you know what? You know why I'm worried about it is because who are they going to come for? Is going to be they're coming for people who look like me and you.
Yeah, it's true. It's totally true. And it's like there's as you were talking, like what came to me was before it was an imperfect system with the willingness to create progress towards perfection. And now it's a system about superiority, right? It's like my way is better than yours, but not so much, not that it's only better than yours, that your way doesn't even matter. Right? Like your way doesn't even matter in any construct or context in this timeline. And that's where, once again, like influence and power and coercion and corruption can totally exist, right? Once again, we can see the alignment inside of businesses. When we look at opportunities that are created for people like us, when we look at CEOs of Fortune 100, of the Fortune 100 companies, right? Like you see this showing up in so many different class type structures where it's just filled with this. And John, I know you posted to John, but I just want to mention John because he had a good point, right? Like term limits, and like we see this in business, right? Like when you're in a startup, like there are a lot of CEOs who are founders who started the company that like are step aside, right? They sometimes take on a chairman role, or they completely exit the company altogether and the company is run by someone else because they get to a point where like they've reached their limit, right? It comes a certain point where they need to pass the torch to someone to allow their mission to continue without them being completely hands-on with it, right? And that's always been acceptable inside of business. And for some reason, we don't have that in other places where like, as a society, we change, and so should the people and the ideas, right, carried by those people also need to shift and adapt and adjust to our society. And we just haven't had that for decades, generations now. So we can talk about this forever, and we will continue to even after November, so but yeah.
Well, look, I think it also highlights another sort of aspect of just humanity that, and I think this applies to your company as well, if you're running one, which is, I think a lot of what we are experiencing now is sort of the, total dissolution of all norms, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is that we have become comfortable with the idea that those norms were like laws, right? But they're not, right? And I think that same thing applies at work, right? If you can't like, I remember I had this fight with Leo, and we did one of his podcasts, and it was all about like, should you give like unlimited time off, right? Or like all these perks. And like, you can't put them there and then not expect people to take advantage of them. Because and then if the expectation is that they should but shouldn't really, well then you got to make that a rule as opposed to like a rule with hidden rules on it, right? Like, because it's very easy for you to understand one thing one way and no one else to understand it that way, right? Like, it's also easy to like have like, when you have rapid change in an organization and lots of new people coming in, they don't have the luxury of history, and they don't have the context of like how rules got to where they are, right? And then that also can be problematic for you, right? And so, I think this, just from a cultural point of view, like inside of your organization, setting those things up. And I think it's good for humans as well, right? Like taking stock and understanding what you do value, right? Like those things change, by the way. Like nothing says there you've got everything for life, right? Like
Exactly.
but sometimes people make decisions because they remember something they value, even though they may not actually value it anymore.
Yeah. And once again, like when you're deep into all the information and everything that's being thrown at you, how can you clearly determine who you are now and what you value and who you were then and what you value then, and think that like, are those the same? Are they different? Like what still carries over from past to present, and what makes sense in terms of making my decision that's going to impact my future, right? It's very difficult to make those type of decisions when you're under duress or you're fearing your life, because in those moments of high stress or uncertainty, your biological reaction is to go into survival, right? Yeah. And what does survival do? Survival brings you back to prehistoric times, times where you weren't even alive, but it's very clear that your brain remembers it, and that's to not die, right? Do everything you can so you can live another day. And when you are in that place, you sacrifice certain things, and more particularly, many of your values, and that's what makes it tough, and
it's interesting because, what you're saying is actually, I believe, some part of the argument that, the people I don't agree with use, right? Which is that like, whatever parochial, ultra conservative version of the world they painted, they feel it's threatened, its survival is threatened.
Yeah.
And so they feel justified in whatever maniacal nonsense they can come up with as a means of like, keeping it alive, right? I guess, look, the only prayer here is that demographically speaking, like they will go extinct.
Yeah. As well, I mean, but hey, like, how long will that take, right? Because who's to say that?
No, totally. But here's the thing, like in Apex Predator, they figure out ways to stay alive a long, long time, right? Like,
it's not an endangered mentality, right? So yeah, like, and that's why it's important for people like us. Not just for the color of our skin, but just with the similar values and mentality, to continue to leverage our platform to share messages that can resonate with people and empower them to make up their own damn mind and stand for what they really believe in, and be an activist, not necessarily for a nation or a community, but for yourself, right? Be an activist, a leader for yourself, and people will see and we see, like, in terms of followers, right? But it's not really necessarily about following someone's lead. It's about activating their own leadership within them, right? And letting it turn into just a group of leaders, right? And and while this is happening, right? Like, it's not like this isn't happening. While this is happening, to your point, people feel threatened. And when they're threatened and they're in fear and it doesn't have boundaries, they're going to lie, cheat, and steal until they get what they want, and that's...
We got a lot of lie, cheating, and stealing happening on one side for sure.
Yeah. And that's unfortunately, that's humans. Humans will do that when there's no boundaries around their fear.
We screwed ourselves. We created all of these little prisons for these ideas, and it's amazing how terribly bad shape we are in now.
Yeah. The one thing that I believe will accelerate this has been the amount of awareness that has been created noticing these things. Like, we weren't having these conversations 8 years ago, bro. No. You know what I mean? Like,
without a doubt. But like I said, because we have a headwind because of their cheating, we have to still win by like so much, right? To win, right? Like, I think I had heard that, like, unless he has like Joe Biden, for example, has like a 7 or 8% differential in the a lead, right? He has to win by like 7 or 8%. If he doesn't win by that much, he can't win. what insanity is it that like one party has to win by 10% and the other party never wins popular vote, right? Like, and we're like you know, like I said, I was at dinner, I was having this conversation, and I said, the main problem that I view that like exists on the Democratic side, at least, is that we don't know how to market our ideas, right? Like I think like what the Republicans do really well is they boil it down to something sort of very sort of like, you know, raw, and everyone gets in line, right? And the Dems, they just sit there shooting at each other about like, well, what about this? You know, and everyone's killing each other. And next thing you know, you got like 5 people left because, you know, everyone else got killed in the process, right? Like arguing about like who could be the biggest, baddest dumbass like around this topic or that topic or whatever it's going to be, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't get our people to align nearly as much. Like they're still arguing if there's enough enthusiasm. Like show me one Dem who likes Trump, right? Like, but yet we still are arguing like about if the Dems are going to show up. Like that's the insanity, right? Like,
yeah. And this is what we're witnessing here is a macrocosm of us as humans, right? Like we're just not in, like, we see this in business, we see this culturally, right? Like, you know, it's oftentimes we see it carried out in different ways, whether, you know, a business has a very toxic work culture, or there's a lot of like intra-community violence happening, right? Black on black crime, right? Shit like that, where we as humans, like, we are so focused on differences as a means of inferiority that we don't spend a lot of time really connecting with what brings us together. And that it resonates with your point, right? Like when you think of groups like the, you know, Republicans, all it takes is them dumbing it down, quote unquote. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but like really simplifying it and bringing together one thing that can really rally people together, right? Like it's so simple, right? And it makes it seem so easy, and it makes their messaging very clear and very connected, right? But on the other side, when you have all these ideas and people are looking to have one superior idea that's better than another, or there's values that aren't in alignment or in disagreement, and you're just focusing on the differences, it makes it very hard to be, you know, a solid presence that is cohesive and that can withstand conflict or pressures that's being put by other forces that are out there, right? Like it's just like a table. The more legs you have under it, the harder it's gonna bend or break under the weight that it's being put on, right? But if you have some flimsy in a few of those legs, all it takes is like a gentle wind for that thing to completely fall apart, you know? And that is right now the struggle that I feel so many people are going through right now, is like, what is truly their belief, and do they feel like they have the resolve to stand firm in their belief through and through, you know? And
I'm just ashamed that more people don't understand that. I'm ashamed for all of them.
Yeah.
I'm truly ashamed that you have to consider, you know, like I'm not a Catholic, but I believe a lot of the Catholic faith, like a lot of the tenets of it are things I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And like, it really annoys me that there are people who claim to be Catholic or Christian or some form and turn their eye to these actual things that I stand up for even more than I see them stand up for. That's shameful as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And that's when you really get to see, you know, people's real stories, right? People can say that they have a story, but we see their story carried out in their behaviors, you know? Like I'm a true, like, anyone who's feeling something right now, whether or not we agree with their feelings or justification for feeling that way, it's all valid, you know? It's the behaviors and the response to those feelings are something that we can always discuss and argue and question, you know? But when we see those things, the real question gets answered is, what is their story? They might be telling us what their story, what their beliefs are, but their behaviors will tell you once and for sure, for all, like, is it in alignment? Is it actually what they're saying that it is?
Well, look, by the way, a lot of things people are feeling, I don't think they are justified in feeling them. Well, they feel what they feel, but the reason they feel that way is potentially based on a lie, right?
Yeah, listen, stories are lies. Stories can be lies, right? Whether they want to believe it or not, right? But the interesting part, which we're also like understanding, is that for some people, like, they're holding this as their truth, whether it's objectively or subjectively a lie is irrelevant, because if they feel it's their truth and they really believe it, that's energy, that's power, right? And so we wonder, like, why we're in this position. Well, it's because there's a lot of people who believe in this truth, and when they believe in that truth, there's a lot of power, and it takes an alternate, and maybe opposite, equal or more power to shift that story. And it could be an experience, it could be someone telling them, it could be from so many different ways. But it's not easy to change someone's story that's been rooted in their souls or their minds for as long as they have been. We're just seeing it now, right? We're just seeing it, in display now. But like, we don't know how far back those stories have been rooted in, So, and that's
for sure. Yeah. I mean, he's just a manipulator of these things, right?
Yeah. Just like any other, marketer that we may disagree with. I mean, call it what it is, but this is human psychology, maybe an advanced level, and he's playing that game ridiculously well, maybe better than any high-level politician we've ever seen, and that on that level. But it doesn't mean that there aren't solutions to it. It doesn't mean that, like, it can't be reversed, and it may not be reversed now, but the fact that we see this now, and it's putting us in position where we're having these conversations and we're feeling the way that we are about it, I have to believe that it shows promise for what our future could look like, whether we're here to see it or not.
Well, New Zealand does have an entrepreneur visa, so.
Yes, and hopefully I will have dual citizenship in Jamaica.
Yeah. like I said, like, it comes down to some fundamentals, right? Like, still for me, like, I still look at my son and I think about, I see the skies in California on fire, right? We can't go outside. We got hurricanes over here. We got tornadoes over there. We got flooding over there. We got fire over here. Like, I'm just like amazed that there are people who are like, what weather? What climate problems? Like it's just baffling to me. Like, and again, it boils down to like capitalism and money. It's literally like some asshole oil guy wants to make some more money. So hence their whole job is getting an entire country to operate against their own best interests, so one person can make more money.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Greed's powerful, man. Greed is powerful. And if there's a structure that allows that greed to exist and grow, who can we really blame?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm short on patience, though.
I hear you, man. I totally hear you. But yeah, I mean, yeah. Like I said, man, it's so easy to get into such a warp zone of just chaos and uncertainty that causes you to be so unsettled that, like, you don't feel or behave like you have any control over your life, and that's a very difficult place to be, especially if you're an entrepreneur. Like, I talked to a few friends who started their businesses in the last 8 to 12 months, and I love it. I love that they had the idea and the willingness to jump in despite what's been going on, and at the same time, like what level of volatility does exist in their world with all this that's going on, you know? And so I share all this to people who are listening, and to just understand that, like, in a world that's very complex and chaotic, the best thing you can do for yourself is to try to keep things as simple as possible, for yourself first, so you have a level of stability that you can stand on, you know, and then from there you can start to like incorporate and add things that you feel might be influential and impactful, not beyond just yourself. And I'm not saying this in a way of like being selfish and, you know, with a small little less, where like you only worry about yourself and not others. That's not what I mean. It's just, it's very difficult to help other people if you're not in a position to help yourself. That is what I mean. You know, so really focus on making sure that you are solid, in a world that is trying to not allow you to be. So then you can be in position to help others.
Yeah, it's kind of like in the airplane when they tell you put your own face mask on first before you help anybody else.
Yeah, it's true. And for so long, I'd never understood that. Like as a teenager growing up, and even like my first few like adult years, I was like, why? Like if I have a kid, like I need to do that. But then I may not have enough air to even get the mask behind her, you know, the rubber band behind her neck, because I might die in that time frame. So I need to like do that in order to even have a better chance of saving her. So yeah. And that's also, listen, like, even if we were not in this position, this is the exact same advice I would give any entrepreneur in any time in their lives. Any type of economic place, political place that we would exist, this is the advice that I would give. Because that is so important. You can't have a business if you don't exist. So you have to really focus on making sure that your foundation is strong before you start to bring other people onto that said foundation.
Yeah. Well, this has been very depressing.
Well, hey, man, this is a great event session, right?
It is a good event session. Today I did a talk, by the way, called, it was based on my sort of framework, but it was the title was Life is a Startup and You're the Product. So I sort of went through a number of these lessons. Actually, you know, similar vein as this, just about some of the analogs between like being a CEO or running a startup and like running your own life. You know, and it was helpful. It was nice to talk to some people and finally, you know, have something you could do to help others. You know,
yeah.
It was a good talk.
We should. I mean, I feel like that can and should be a conversation we come back to. I mean, we talked about it in the early stages of MVP, but I feel like now it could be. I'm sure our message has definitely become more refined since we were initially talking about it. I think we should have a conversation and really talk about that, because
I got a deck. I was going to send it to you anyway, but I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go through it, you know, in the next one of these, after you've had some chance to put some thought into it as well.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Because I feel like, you know, what I would love to offer those who are willing to, you know, join us in these conversations is to feel some level of being equipped with how to handle situations like this, you know?
Yeah.
Like, this is such an unknown for so many people, and it's scary for them. And if there's anything that we can do to alleviate some of that fear by having something that they can use as a tool to ground themselves and to feel like they can do this, they can get through this, you know, I think it would be a great thing to offer as we get closer to November and the weeks after.
This week reminds me of that scene in Office Space when they all got fired and they go out with the bats and beat the crap out of the printer.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is just something that feels like, you know, primally relieving about just, you know, I don't know, digging a hole or something. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. It's like those I think they call them. I forget what they call them, but those
Big rooms.
yeah, right. Those rooms where you can just like destroy a bunch of stuff. Absolutely. Why not?
If you haven't seen it, there's a Netflix show. This guy does like magic. It's actually like if you want to, and he goes to, I think he goes to one like in California somewhere.
Yep.
But he goes to a range room and he has a woman like destroy a thing, and then he puts it back together, and it's like a favorite painting or guitar or something. I forgot what it was. But
it was a guitar.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I feel like that, so I've been writing for my charity for the GCC, which is the this Children's Cancer Society. Mm-hmm. So I raised like $1,300. My goal is 2,000, so I still got a ways to go. Nice. But the day after RBG died, I rode. My longest ride to date was 33 miles maybe. So I went and I rode 59 miles that next morning because I was just like, I looked it up. She graduated law school in 1959, and it was one of those things that just made me feel so crappy that like all of her hard work and important work, we didn't even like have a minute to grieve. We were instantly like trying to figure out how to defend her legacy, because like in the matter of months, they're already looking to basically totally, unwind so much of it, and that's what I think depresses me about this stuff is that all of this progress was hard won,
Yeah.
And to have it cheated away from us, is really despicable. And that is fully the intention, it is all veiled kinds of discrimination and racism and, all kinds of goofy and bad things like that is all planned, right? Like, I don't understand this disgusting thread that unifies all these things, and I don't really want to but this is the sadness of this stuff, right? And so I don't know. Like, I'm hoping everyone out there send us examples of people being good to each other, because that's what I want to see, right? Like, because every time I see anything, it's freaking just a bunch of assholes being even bigger assholes than somebody else, and I'm kind of tired of that.
Yeah. And I would say, man, like, it starts with us.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you don't necessarily need to ignore what's happening out there, but it doesn't need to be the only thing that we know that's out there either.
No, it doesn't. But we're getting close to a very important moment in history that we also can't like take our eye off the ball right now either.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I'm kind of pooped.
Yeah, man. Hey, listen, man. Sometimes these conversations get emotionally charged.
I still got my YC application due like in 4 hours. I still got a bunch of work to do for that. I guess like it's just the last 2 weeks have been very stressful, and it only just got like extra wet blankets put on top of them with all this other nonsense happening. So yeah, I'm kind of exhausted now. But hopefully by next week I will have my art finally up.
Nice.
I keep threatening. Marie and I are like we got like a project. I'm trying to like finally like assemble this wall. I have all the art. It's all on the ground. It's just sitting around here. I just haven't done anything.
Just gotta put it up.
This is a step in the right direction, right? Like I just need more than like this white wall looking at me, or this blue wall behind me, So yeah.
Yeah, we have a project too. We're doing a floating desk in our office, and it's 10 foot butcher block.
Well, how heavy is it?
Like almost 200 pounds. So
you have to screw into all the studs, and then it slides on it.
So the brackets are up, and we're ready to put it on. The only problem is we ordered unfinished, and so now we have to put a clear couple.
Finish. Well, because you can make it whatever color you want to.
Yeah, I mean, we like the natural wood, so we're gonna keep that for sure, and it's gonna look amazing. That's why I'm like doing the show from my bedroom. But like, but once that is up, then we'll be able to put some stuff there too. So hopefully,
the whole wall.
Yes, it's the wall itself. That side of the wall is 11 and a half feet long. So it's gonna obviously be very.
How do you get power behind it and stuff?
Oh, so yeah, so like brackets drilled connected to the studs all the way down.
Do you have holes in the top countertop or something? Like how will you get power?
Oh, we'll have to drill through
Yeah,
the bracket and screw them on. Yeah.
Ah.
Full on project, bro.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. I'm not that handy. I have a screwdriver. Yeah, I'm scared to like even put nails in this wall, right? Like, and that's just to hang pictures.
I mean, I've always been reluctant to do any type of project in a place, especially one that like I'm renting.
Yeah.
But being out here, like in this space, makes me feel like, oh, like I could totally do this. Like it's not even a big deal, you know.
I'm definitely getting more into a nesting mindset also at this point because I'm basically know we're going to be stuck inside for the winter.
Yeah.
So, it's another 4 months of hanging out in down here. So I was like, all right, I'm going to start. Yeah, I like these. I found this like local artist. She makes all of this art that's like
so cool.
Human. So I got the heart.
Oh, I love that.
I got the lungs. This I just like this one. Like,
I dig it. It.
Oh, this one is another good one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that one.
That one will be back there somewhere. But yeah, I guess to your point, you got to create some moments of joy around you, something to get your mind inspired again. So that's what I'm hoping some of this will be.
Yeah, man. It's one of the few things we get to control, right?
It is one of the few things we get to control. All right, my friend. Well, I think we'll call it quits a little early today. Thank you, everyone, for indulging us with probably more my ranting. But if you feel this way, we feel you. Like, we know you're there. So you can hit us up to yell as well if you need to. It's always helpful to talk to others. So by all means, reach out, talk to somebody if you need to talk to somebody. Hit me up if you just want to yell, But we'll look forward to it. And next week, in the show after, we will go through like revisit our MVP principles with you all. So
yeah,
I'll get an actual proper post up this time so we can remember.
Awesome.
All right, man.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.